Well, hello, everyone. It is great to be here and to be with you again, as always, bringing you a fabulous guest where we're going to have a free-ranging conversation on a whole range of things. For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Alex Tullio and I'm the CEO of Financial Executive Women. And it's my job to bring you interesting conversations with fantastic role models 3 times a week. And we have been showing up for over 100 episodes now. And yet I still get excited. What can I say? So today is no exception, of course, where I have a fantastic guest in Ms. Jules Brooke. Now, for those of you who don't yet know Jules, let me introduce her. Jules started hosting a show about female founders called She's the Boss on Ticker TV back in late 2019. On the back of that, Jules started a Facebook group and also started running free weekly Zoom lunches for female founders under the name She's the Boss. And this was followed by a podcast series, She's the Boss Chats, where Jules interviews female founders about their entrepreneurial journey. After parting with Ticker TV, Jules started the She's the Boss YouTube channel where she interviews amazing female founders from around the world. Her plans for She's the Boss include growing the community of supportive female founders and women in business and starting the first on-demand global TV network for women in business in 2021. Jules is also the founder of Handle Your Own PR, a PR SaaS platform in Australia for small business owners, experts and entrepreneurs who want to get publicity for their brand. Jules, welcome. Come on down on stage.
Thank you so much.
Hey, it's so good to have you here. And, you know, it always it makes me smile because I read the bios and I'm like, oh, I want to ask this and I want to know that. But before we jump into all of that,
Sure.
I always love to know a bit, in your words, like the bio is one thing, but I'd love to know a bit more about the Jules Brooke story that led you to this point, you know, starting She's the Boss and everything that kind of led up to that moment.
Sure. Where would you like me to start? I mean, do you want me to go back to school? Do you want me to go back to a few years ago?
Back.
What would you like?
Go back, go way back, whatever feels right.
All right. Okay. Well, I moved to Australia when I was 11. I am the eldest of 4 kids, 3 brothers, all incredibly successful entrepreneurs. And we moved here not knowing anything about Australia at all. And I guess I discovered quite early on that I was really quite entrepreneurial. I'm sure it's something to do with ADHD, even though I've never been diagnosed. But anyway, I started off my career in newspapers, doing newspaper sales. I then moved into, so that was my big sort of corporate thing, and I did 5 or 6 years there. Then I started a graphic design business back in the days where I was explaining what CD-ROMs were and what interactive content was. That was really fun. Then I spent 5 years living in London and working at various different graphic design ad agencies, marketing agencies as a freelance account director. Came back, pretty much had a baby or found out I was pregnant straight away after I arrived back after all that time away. And very soon after that, when my son was born, I started Handle Communications, which was a PR business. There is a great backstory to that because if any of your viewers know Mark Mitchell, aka Con the Fruiterer, I met him at a party once with someone who was in PR. And he rang me about 2 weeks later and he said, Jules, they've just told me they're bringing out a best of Con the Fruiterer DVD and I've told them you're the best person to do the PR. And I had never done PR in my life at that stage. And he got me completely wrong. But I really needed the money and I've always been intrigued with PR. So I just gave it a go. And I ended up getting, quite a lot of interviews, went back to the DVD company and said, you know, I've got all these interviews for him. And they went, wow, you're amazing. Here's 5 more. And I literally taught myself how to do PR and started an agency on the back of that. Then in 2009, so I'd had the agency 6 or 7 years. I had a bit of a light bulb moment in the GFC when a lot of our clients who were small business owners and entrepreneurs and startups themselves started peeling off because PR was sort of, I guess, further down there in terms of, you know, your priorities. It slipped to the bottom. And I just had that moment and I thought, oh my God, the media is so desperate for stories and all these people have incredible businesses. Why don't I just teach people how to go direct and cut out the middleman. And that was why I started Handle Your Own PR. I've probably now taught, God, hundreds of business owners how to get publicity, and they've been all over the place. Then in 2000, and I was running the agency at the same time with a partner. In 2009 or so, or 10, I can't remember, something around there anyway, I made this decision that, okay, I want to teach rather than do PR, and gave my partner the agency, and I took Handle Your Own PR. And I'll never forget her saying, I think you've made a huge mistake. You've chosen the wrong company. And I was like, nope, I know what I'm doing. And in 2015, I sold my house, which I'm sure any of the finance women will be going, oh my God, she didn't, because you shouldn't. And I built a PR SaaS platform. And so that's kind of how Handle Your Own PR's trundled along. I do PR accelerators, and I actually match people with journalists. And the journalist's job is to help you come up with newsworthy angles and then write and edit your releases for you while you're with them. So that's been my program, and I've been running that for a few years now. And then I got the opportunity on Ticker TV, which you mentioned in the intro, in late 2019. And that was just a complete fluke. So that was a guy posting on LinkedIn who I knew had been at Sky Business. And he said, I'm going to start my own TV channel and I'm looking for people to interview. And I just went, yep, okay, I'll come and talk about Handle Your Own PR. And at the end of the interview, he said to me, you're so much fun. Why don't you come and co-host the lunchtime show? And I was like, oh my God, I've been discovered. It was so exciting. And I hosted and so I did this show with him, and he was looking for other shows. And I said to him, there are no shows for women in business on television. You just never see women who are, you know, kicking goals out there in business on television. So can I have a show called She's the Boss? And I'm going to interview not only female founders, but also women doing extraordinary things in business. So I really love people who are disrupting industries, who've got really, really big plans. And that's kind of how it all started. And then the lockdown came, then COVID came, and that kind of changed everything. So everyone was suddenly online. Lots of the women that I knew were starting to really spiral and go, I don't know what I'm going to do. This is the end of my career. My life is over as I know it. And I thought, why don't I just start doing Zoom lunches so we can all connect and see that we're, you know, all in the same boat. And of course, I am a bit of a Pollyanna, so I'm always looking at the positive side of things. So we started doing this. We did this one Zoom lunch. I just signed up for Zoom, and I thought, I'll give it a go. And it was just really fun. And from that, I remember at the end saying, and they went, no, we can't wait that long. So since March last year, I have been doing weekly lunches for female founders. I missed 3 weeks over Christmas, and other than that, I've done it every week, bit like you with your shows. Then on the back of that, I thought at Ticker TV, while I was still there, he was saying to me, your interviews are too long. Like, no one wants to listen. Well, you'll love this. He said, no one wants to listen to old women talk for a long time. And I said to him, he did. And really, I would have to say, I think that's pretty much the attitude on television. So he tried to get me to do a half-hour show interviewing 6 women. And I hate that idea. I don't want sound bites. I want to really dig down and find out how businesses have developed, and or if they're, you know, if they're working in business, what their career path has been in order to get there. So I said, okay, I'll start a podcast. Luckily, my partner is an audiobook producer anyway. So he said, I'll produce it. And I went, great. So I have now interviewed about 100 women, all about their businesses. And there are so many incredible people in Australia, as you know, doing incredible things in business. So that was the start of it. And then basically I parted ways with Ticker along the back of the second lockdown, and him saying, I'm putting it on pause, but I don't really know, you know, whether anyone really wants to listen to these women. So I thought, so I went back. So I'd started this Facebook group, and I said, okay, girls, I'm not going to be doing the TV show, just the podcast. And this is how the universe rewarded me. I got one call from a girl in Sydney who said, I've booked a studio, you can have it. It's yours, you know, I'll pay for it. Go and keep your show going. And I said, that's amazing, but we're in lockdown. I can't leave my house. And literally an hour later, I got a phone call from the amazing Sam Elam, who runs Media Maneuvers, which is a really big media training company. And she said, I've just dismantled a whole TV studio and I'm looking for somewhere to put the equipment. Would you like it?
Oh, that is awesome.
Isn't it? It was just like it was all meant to be. So I started doing it across my dining room table, and we called it She's the Boss in Lockdown, put it all up on YouTube. And I don't know what's happened to me, but I just suddenly have gone, there are no boundaries to the women I could interview. So I started interviewing a woman. So the people I've interviewed are like a woman who founded an oil company in Belize. She found the oil herself and is now the biggest revenue generator in that country. A woman who's had an Order of Australia and helped thousands of women, disabled women in India, become independent and help them set up their businesses. A woman who has 80,000 followers on Instagram and is a huge advocate for disability being made much more visible in the media. And let me tell you, the stat I heard from her is 20% of the population are disabled. And you wouldn't know that, really, from what we see. That's a massive proportion.
That's huge.
And anyway, so, I could go on forever. I've just been interviewing fantastic women. And then earlier this year, or late last year, some of the women said to me, well, what are you going to do with this group? And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, you've got this momentum. You've got all these incredible women. What are you going to do with it? And I thought, what am I going to do? I know what I'll do. I'll do what Ticker TV did, but I'll do it just for women. And now I've done a whole lot of research into it. So I want to start the first TV network that is just focused on women in business. And my main rule is that there are only going to be female hosts. So so that's my big plan. So that's my big, hairy, audacious goal. And in the short term, I'm also looking for sponsors for She's the Boss and the podcast and the TV show, because I've been doing it all kind of on the smell of an oily rag. And I just want to get this content out. These women are amazing. So anyway, that's me in a nutshell.
Okay, well, I love that, because I've been making notes madly, and I want to dig into this. So
yeah, go for it.
So it's funny. So for everyone watching, Jules and I have had a few chats over Zoom. We're yet to make it together, and every time we've chatted, Jules, we're like, oh, like there's so much to talk about.
I know.
We wouldn't have any problem. But I remember you said to me, you said, oh, I'm really nosy. I just like to know. I'm so curious. I'm like, okay, well, great. So that's both of us.
So you're going to turn the tables on me.
Oh, isn't it funny though? Because you're probably similar to me. You're so used to being the one asking the questions that when it switches again, you're like, oh, hang on, this is a bit different. So look, feel free to ask me questions. This is conversational, not an interview. Gosh, what did I just do there? But I'd love to know. I love that you did start way back, and I deliberately asked you to do that because I knew there'd be some really interesting stuff there. When you were changing and doing different things and moving countries and all those things that you were describing, how did that ever impact your sense of identity, your sense of place, your sense of confidence, or were you always kind of like, nah, I am who I am, and are you one of those people who can land and then go off and do your thing, or did you take some adjustment?
No, I am definitely one of those people who can land and do their own thing, but I'll tell you why. And it was another interview that I suddenly realised it. My father was in the British Army. Weirdly, he was an obstetrician in the British Army. But anyway, that always kind of people go, what, are there that many women? But we lived on army bases in Germany, in Cyprus, in England. And for the last 4 years, my parents and my brothers lived in Germany, and I went to boarding school in England. And I think I worked out that I've been to 15 schools by the time I came to Australia at the age of 12. So we had really moved around a lot. And I guess you either sink or swim in those situations because you're constantly being the new girl in class. And so I think there are two forms that takes. Either you become very introverted and used to your own company and you're not fussed about people, or you're like me and you learn how to make friends really, really fast. And I think that was my thing. So even when we moved to Australia, I started in halfway through year 7, and I'm still friends, I have to say, with great glee with all of those girls. So I started in year 7, but by year 11, my parents had a fight with the headmistress at the school, and I ended up starting year 12 in a whole new school in inner city Melbourne. So,
wow.
I just learned very, very fast how to make friends and how to feel like I'm part of the furniture pretty fast.
It's and hearing you talk about that, I mean, you make it sound easy, but there's so much in there, isn't there, about resilience, and you're right that Well, I think it's probably part innate personality, but what you adapt, right? We're adaptive as human beings. So, and I'm always fascinated by that, because I think, so much of what I end up asking and talking about, which of course is, what you're interested in. It's funny how this happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a journey of identity and voice and who you are and your place in the world. And, there's so many things. So I'm fascinated about that. I wanted to ask you.
I have to say, as the eldest of four as well, and the only girl in the family, my dad was always, my mum and dad, but my dad particularly was like, you can do whatever you want to do. There are absolutely no restrictions. And I really have always believed that. I don't think there's anyone I can't talk to. There's nothing I can't do. But I have to say, when I hit my 40s and looked around at my brothers and their friends, I suddenly noticed that gender disparity in salaries and in the roles, that they were all CEOs and general managers of big companies, and myself and all my friends were all looking around at sort of middle management, senior management jobs, but we wouldn't have dreamt of going up to the great heights of being CEO or whatever. So it was really interesting, and I think it just affords, that is part of your identity as well. But I was certainly pretty confident growing up, and my dad and mum always said, you're a really smart girl, you can do whatever you want. And I kind of took that and ran with it.
Okay, I love that. So again, there's so many things. What do you think then, that reflection, just what you were talking about then, in this in the disparity? So, it is, well, we're celebrating. We figured International Women's Day, which I know you had a really busy one. We figured a day's not enough. We're doing a whole series of stuff over the month of March, because why not?
Fantastic. Love that.
I know. So I think this is interesting. I'm really fascinated to get your perspective on what is it that when you reflect on that point in time, when you looked at your brothers and just what you were saying then about, they're all CEOs and GMs. So I'd love your insight on when you noticed that, what was the reflection point is what I want to ask you. Like, did you get any insight when you went, hang on, I'm really confident. I know I can do whatever I want to. I've taken that and run with it. And yet, was it different choices and pathways? Was it valuing different things?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that I have the answer. It really struck me all of a sudden. I think it was when there was somebody in our group and they were talking about their salary being 450. And I just remember thinking, I don't know anyone in my female circle of friends, and I have very strong women around me, that is even thinking about those sorts of salaries. And I remember just that moment where I just thought, how did that even happen? Because I know that my brothers would all think that I was equal with them and would have supported me. So I can only put it back down to, I guess it's the unconscious bias that I now know about. But at the time, I just put it down to, they've just got more opportunities than I have. I don't think I actually kind of deeply reflected. But what do you think? Let's turn the tables again.
Well, I know. I love it. This is a whole new thing. What do I think? I think, like a lot of these things, there's different layers, isn't there? Because I think there's absolutely unconscious bias. I think there's and obviously I'm not talking about you particularly, but just in general. Definitely, I think their confidence does come into it. Like I struggled a bit with that generalization that, women tend to be less confident. And I've got to say, the statistic that we've all heard, men can tick blah, blah on the box, and women, and I do see that in a lot of our amazing community watching. I know a lot of you kind of go, but, am I good enough and can I do it? And there's this doubt. That's real. That is real, that imposter syndrome and that kind of reluctance, and maybe it's perfectionism. So I think that's part of it. And I also think it's different choices, isn't it? Because, I reflect back on my career in financial services and you go, well, you know what? You get really well paid in financial services.
I was going to say partly I think it's the sectors you go into.
Sectors
and I've always been very attracted to very creative kind of jobs, and then I became an entrepreneur. So, the pay is not great in that. And my best friend is very senior in finance, actually, and is about to retire because she's managed to do all of that preparing for, retirement. Yeah. I haven't done that at all. I assume I'll still be working when I'm 80, and I won't be able to stop because now that I've really got my teeth stuck into women and women in business, it's something I just want to go with forever.
But hang on, Jules. I mean, look, let's just say that no one's interested in hearing it from older women about business. Can we just revisit that moment?
Excuse my French.
Right? So and again, there's so many. I've got this list of questions I want to ask you, but let's go there because I love what you're doing. I love the concept of She's the Boss. I love female founders and entrepreneurs because, again, it just maybe as the segue from what we were just talking about, more and more you are hearing about females who are founders and entrepreneurial, but not typically, right? It tends to be more around guys and entrepreneurial guys and taking more risk and all these things. So I want to ask you about one. I mean, you said early on that, your brothers were all entrepreneurial. You very much feel that you're well, you are. I mean, look what you're doing. What do you think that takes? Like, is it a different mindset? Is it a different risk appetite? Is it a different attitude? Like, what do you think it means to be entrepreneurial and then go out and do your own thing and carve your own path? That's the first thing I want to ask you.
It's an interesting question because it's one that I ask all the women that I interview as well. And I think for a lot of us, it is role modeling. I really do think it's what you see and what you experience. Now, my father was a doctor, so he's hardly an entrepreneur, but he left the army when I was only 11, moved to Australia with no family, no nothing, took up a job that he'd seen in the British Medical Journal in suburban Melbourne, and it all fell to pieces within 2 months. There was a guy in the practice that he was working with that really didn't like him. And so I remember him sitting down with me and my brother. So I was 11, my youngest brother was 5. And they basically, Mum and he took out a can of baked beans and they went, right, we're going out on our own. So this is going to be our meal. We're all going to have half a baked bean each for breakfast and half a baked bean for dinner. And we're going to give it a go. And I just remember that really well. And then over the years, I guess, look, I definitely, now that I've got a son who's been diagnosed with ADHD, and I remember the practitioner looking at me and saying, it's genetic, don't you? And I went, no, I've never even heard of that. And she said, yeah, there you go. It gets passed down. And I thought, and then she did this sort of presentation for my son that she does to GPs. And part of it said the classic career path or the classic profession for someone with ADHD is entrepreneurship. And I thought, how weird. Myself and my 3 brothers are all entrepreneurs. And it just made me think. So I think there's probably a touch of that as well. But I do think role modeling plays a huge part. And I guess that's what drives me a bit in what I'm doing now, because there are so many amazing women who are doing incredible things in business, and we just don't ever hear about them here. We hear little snippets, and people are more likely to be asked on their expertise and to share their expertise than their story of how they got there. And I think that's the bit that I've always been fascinated with. Like, how did you get that job? And the number of women, I mean, I interviewed a woman this morning who said, I left school at 13. I was married by 18. I had 5 kids by the time I was 25.
Wow.
And yet she's just going out on her own now at 50. So I guess, I think a big part of it is role modeling. And I think we need to make successful women in business very visible so that the younger generations and the generations now that are going through, their own employment can kind of see that there shouldn't be any limits.
I love this. Oh, I've got goosebumps. I mean, unsurprisingly, you and I are very
I love you.
because storytelling and real role models, at the minute you say that, that's when I feel this visceral reaction, because you're right, we don't have enough, and it is storytelling. It's as old as time, yes. Right? And I think and again, we're going into, but why not? We're going into, it's complex territory. It is very complex. Because we're talking about humans and what you grow up with in beliefs and belief systems and
what happens in your life as well.
And what is real to you. And I think it's interesting that when we're talking about this, even what success looks like what success, how we look at that, a lot of that is kind of almost prescribed for us in terms of what we see, what's normal. So I reflect and I'm thinking, well, similar to your parents, right? Like my parents, I'm the eldest of 3 girls, and don't the eldest siblings have such a cross to bear? Let me just say.
We do.
shout out to all the elder siblings out there. But, and that was what I grew up in a household that was literally, I remember my dad came home with stickers that said, girls can do anything, right? So this is,
great dad.
Great dad, right? So absolutely. And it was absolutely, it was very much, education, because that gives you choices and you can do whatever you want. And I don't want to say but, because I always find that but kind of means everything you've said before isn't actually what you mean. What I find interesting about that is, so I kind of reflect and go, wow, I grew up with I could do anything. Yet my interpretation of what success, it was quite, you went into corporate, you got a job that paid well, you went up the career. Like for me, I was like, because I didn't have, so this is now interesting because live we're seeing, I'm actually going, that's interesting. I hadn't thought that before. I didn't have entrepreneurial role, like no one in terms of my immediate family or people I knew really had their own business or did their own thing. So the path that you took was you went to university. I had no idea what I wanted to do, by the way. I did an arts degree, and I remember my dad said to me, because I said, arts degree, because my rebellion was basically year 12, so I didn't get the marks to do law, which I don't think I wanted to do, but that's what you did because I'd always been this straight A student.
My rebellion started at first year uni, so I did well at school and I was very well behaved, and then I went completely off the rails.
And then it all went out. Well, I kind of went a year too early. And so I remember going, great, I'm doing an arts degree, what's the point? And my dad put himself through uni when he was in his 40s and did an arts, and he said, love, it'll teach you how to think. And so I reflect how funny that we're now talking about that. But I think this concept of role models and pathways that we take, because that's what you see. And for me, it was,
and you can't be it if you can't see it, for a lot of people, not for everyone.
Yep.
But I definitely think that you need to see that. And the other thing, to be fair, I think, is we left England where hardly anyone is entrepreneurial that I know anyway. And I went back and lived there as an adult. And I remember saying to people, I'm going to start my own business. And there was this collective, really? What if it fails? I mean, that was the whole thing. And I'd be like, well, if it fails, I'm no worse off than I am now. But we moved to Australia. Yeah. And I think in Australia, there is that more pioneering spirit. There were a lot more small business owners that we knew. Yeah. Most of my dad's friends, rather than working for big hospitals, had their own practices. Yeah. But I have to say, my mother was very much of your ilk and just spent probably the first 15 years of my career going, can't you just go and get a job? Like, go and work somewhere like a bank where it'll be all secure and, you'll get the gold watch after 20 years or whatever, like my father did, because her father was a bank manager for the Bank of Ireland. And, so I was never attracted to it. And I always believed I could do whatever I wanted to do. And now I want to disrupt. In the early days, I just wanted to, have a great business and feel like I owned something. But now I'm like, I don't know what's hit me since I've become 50. And I'm like, I don't really mind whether people like me or not like me anymore. I think I've got something to do.
I love that you've gone there, and it's terrible because I can't think who it is right now, but I was having this conversation with another woman only very recently who went, God, isn't it liberating when you kind of get to the point where you go, don't really care.
Yeah. It is.
And again, I find it interesting because really what we're talking about is all things confidence, identity, finding your voice, doing alignment, right, in terms of what energizes you. And I talk a lot about, which my team is sick of, the zone of genius, right? It's like when you're in the zog, this is when you're energized, you could do it all day. And it's when you do your best work. So tell me then, and I did promise everyone a free range conversation, and we're delivering, absolutely.
I'm scared now. What are you going to ask me?
No. I'm so and you're right, similar, because we've spoken to a lot of amazing guests, case in point, over a year, and I don't know, something like 120 episodes or something, and you start to have these, it's an incredible feeling, isn't it, when someone trusts you to have a conversation like this and share their story. So I'd love to know, like, as you're on this journey and you're discovering and speaking to these amazing women, and as you said before, like you literally, I know, you just reach out and go, oh, well, what's the harm in asking? And here we are.
I'm actually interviewing Oprah Winfrey's chief of staff of 12 years tomorrow, and I never thought I'd get through to her. So there you go.
Well, 1 degree of separation. That's all I can say.
I know.
So keep
We won't
going.
talk
I'll be
about
the
the,
same.
we won't talk about
Jules.
the Harry and Meghan interview, but could be next time. You never know.
You could ask Oprah about what she left off the table there. But this is the thing, right? So I think part of that, I think for everyone watching, there's real gold. I mean, I know we've got a lot of levity going on, but there's real gold here because you're just like, well, why don't I just ask? And there, you said before something like, and I realized there were no boundaries to what I could do. Like, who's to say you can't reach it? All people can do is say no. And
That's
generally,
right.
if people say no, it's because of stuff that they've got going on or it's not the right time. And I think for me, that was a big, definitely a big piece, I think, in identity and voice, going, well, actually, it's not because I'm not good enough, right? Or it's not because that was the narrative for a long time.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know, like, are there themes? Are there things that start to emerge when you speak to the oil baroness, to the entrepreneur in tech, to the corporate, C-suite exec? Are there things that you're starting to go, oh, this is interesting? There are similarities in mindset or attitude, or is it just?
Well, I'll tell you something that's really interesting. And I only realized it the other day when I had yet another woman tell me that that's how she'd started her career. And that is that not a lot of female lawyers stay in law. They all become entrepreneurial. I would say of the 100 women. Yeah, that is something I've really noticed, that they go, oh, yeah, I did law and then I did a year, 6 months, 4 years, whatever it might be. And I thought, oh, I need to change this. And then they go off and start a business. So I found that really interesting. Other than that, and the role modeling, I think, is also really important, that most people of the women that I'm interviewing have had a mother or father who either has done like our parents have done and said you can do anything, or they've actually been running all sorts of businesses, from, milk bars to, there was a great woman I interviewed from Vietnam, and her parents, she said when it was communist, they couldn't, they just worked in the fields and did what they were told. And as soon as the economy came out, she said, my parents became entrepreneurs. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, they're on their 6th business. They now own the biggest car company or something, or car hire company in Vietnam. And I thought, wow, so definitely the role modeling, I think that's really important. And it doesn't have to be your parents. It could be aunts, uncles, your best friend's parent, whatever. What other things have I noticed? I think the other thing I've noticed is that really women over 40 are the ones that are getting really successful. So I do interview some younger women, but in general, I think a lot of people like to start their career, as we all do, and I did as well, with a company, so you can understand how the dynamics were and, all the sorts of things of working in a company before they go out on their own. And most of them then identify something that is either wrong in that company, wrong in their life. They've had a baby and they've noticed a gap. There's something that has happened that's made them start a business. It's nearly always been a struggle at the beginning. Very few of them have had, oh yeah, I hit the ground running and off it went. But by the time they get to sort of my age, mid-50s, we've got women who are absolutely incredible. And to go back to the woman with the oil company, for her, she said, you've got to visualize it. Her big thing is it's all about using all parts of your mind, that human beings only use 10% of our brains. There's 90% more. If you can access that, then you can and she just always says to me, think big. And even with the TV network idea, and I was sort of having a wobble at the end of last year, and she said to me, what's your goal for it for this year, Jules? And I said, well, I'm hoping to raise the funds. And she went, no, bigger. And I was like, okay. Would be great if I won an award for it. And she goes, bigger. And she said, I want you to think that you're at the United Nations and they're calling out your name to give you a gold medal for doing something for women. And I was like, oh my God, okay, I'm going to think about that as my 5-year plan. And she went, no, I want you to try and get that by the end of this year. So I think that's a big part of it as well. And certainly I work with loads and loads and loads of women, and a lot of them don't have the self-confidence. And then you start talking to them about how amazing they are and the incredible things they've done. And by the end of it, they start kind of going, oh yeah, well, actually I have achieved quite a lot, and maybe I'm not as bad as I thought I was. But I think a lot of women are lacking in confidence. So that's something that even some of the entrepreneurs have had very unconfident, or I don't know how you say, unconfident starts to their lives, but something's happened that's given them the confidence, and then they've just taken the leap. But I just find it fascinating.
It is, and I reckon that there's a few things that just when you're talking there. So one, I think this is the thing that I reflect on. It's who you hang out with is such a big part, right? And I think, and also as we get older, wiser, as I like to say, but you learn that you can choose energetically who you spend time with, and
absolutely.
And has a massive difference, because and I love that you said that, it's so rare does anyone start out and they're the overnight success that doesn't exist.
It doesn't.
And it's the people that you hang out with that literally I love. I also say the wobble, because you have a bit of a wobble.
You do.
And being aware
I think it's important. It's important to acknowledge that we have a wobble, because otherwise people think if they have one, oh my God, something's wrong, and it doesn't. Mm-hmm. But to go back to your point of it's who you hang around with, one of the great sayings I love is if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You want to be the dumbest person in the room, surrounded by people that are stretching, your capabilities and your thoughts and your creativity, and pushing you to do things you didn't think you could do.
So true. And, as you say that, and for our beautiful community out there, I'm seeing you. But, we've got women and men who are variously going, gosh, is this what I want to do with my life? Who've just taken the plunge to do something for their own, who are heading to the C-suite and corporate. And the thing I love about these conversations is that it doesn't actually matter the path that you're on, right? Because what we're talking
not at all.
Is, and especially what you said then, that's a big bugbear of mine. I think when you're a leader, there's no handbook, right? So you again talk about role modeling. And I remember the first leadership role I got, and this pressure, thinking, well, gosh, now I've got the gig. They're going to think they expect me to know how to do this. And so you start to go, well, I can't ask a question because I don't want to look like I don't know, and all these things. And I think, again, as you get older and wiser and you probably get this more innate confidence, you're like, well, I don't care if it's a dumb question, I'll ask anyway. But I don't feel like you have that when you're young and coming up, because you are.
No, even though I seem really confident now, and I was very confident when I was younger, and I remember being headhunted to go and work with News Limited and being put through management training, and then walking into a room with 70 women who had worked in that organization. I was a trainer in the classified department, and they had 70 women, some of whom had been there for 20 years, who were not very impressed with the 20-year-old that came in that would be made into management to boss them around. So I'm very aware of that as well. But I think I've completely lost my train of thought. Keep going. I'll jump back in again.
Well, and I think we were talking about it's experience, because what you've just described, walking into that room, that's overwhelming, right? And it made me think about, which I've shared with our community before. I remember my first exec role, and I was set, and it was a margin lending division of the bank. Very smart people who'd been there for eons, very technical. And I remember thinking, oh, great. So I'm the newbie exec sent up from Melbourne for a Sydney business that knows nothing about this product. And I love that we're talking about this. And that's what I mean. Like, it transcends whether you're an entrepreneur or what stage or whatever.
Absolutely.
It's that for me was that, and it took 6 months of basically, crying every night going, oh my God, I can't do this and they're going to think I'm an idiot. But it was actually in that moment, or in that time, where I realized the skill that I brought, because you mentioned that before as well about, being able to, the confidence, I think, is being able to articulate and recognize what you bring, which is hard to do for yourself, because especially I think women, it's like, well, I just do this. Like, I remember I used to say, but I just ask questions and have conversations. And I remember back then it was very much, oh, hang on, I put teams together, and I this is the part I play in the machine.
All this stuff that you're not thinking about that you do.
And you learn the technical stuff, and you need to know your business and all that. But and that's actually what I wanted to ask you, with everything that you've done and you're doing. So, and also I want to, before we run out of time, I want to talk about this TV network. What do you think of if you go, you know what, you could throw me in anywhere and you've pretty much done so many things. What's the set of skills for you that you would go, these are kind of the transferable things that Jules, Brooke, can pretty much, I can take this set of skills and pretty much apply it to any kind of situation, business, endeavor. Like, are you really clear on that now?
I am very clear that I'm a bit of a super connector. That's something that I've probably only come to in the last 5 or 6 years, that I've realized that I've actually got great networks. But it's not that. It's more that when I meet someone, my brain fires off. Here are these other 3 people. I should talk to them, because between them, they'd be able to do something great.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably one of my main skills, and I'm very creative, and I think outside the square. And that's something. I've also got sales ability, because I did that when I was younger. I understand marketing, and now I've taught myself PR and been doing that for the last 20 years. But I think those are probably the skills that I would say that I have most: partnering and sort of connecting people together. And my big passion now, which I should have said earlier, I realized, is really that I want to encourage women to lift up the women around them. That is really my kind of motto with She's the Boss, is not only am I going to shine the light on these women, but that we all collectively need to rise up and help all the women around us. Because one of the questions I ask people all the time is, are there any women that have helped you in your career? And the women that have had amazing female mentors have gone on to do fabulous things, because people have given them opportunities. And that's another skill that in itself is recognizing an opportunity and accepting it and going with it, and understanding it might not work, but it's not going to be the end of the world.
Yeah, you're
all of these things are things, though, that happen when you're older. I just think when you're 20, you don't have the experience or the...
And you still learn, you're still figuring it out, aren't you?
Right.
I mean, and I think that is the beauty of getting older and wiser, because you start, for all the things that we've said. I mean, we've talked about great mentors, conversations, role models, real stories, connecting, wisdom, like all of these things. And I think it does start to give you the confidence and perspective to go, you know what, I'm great at this. And you can, like everything you've just described, and even see you almost not undermined it, but I think you said, oh, I'm a bit of a super connector. We're not a bit of a super connector. You are a super connector. And because my aim for this year as well, of words I'm not going to use, is just. Because
yes, that's a good one.
Well, when you tune in, and this is for everyone listening, I think this is a great little experiment. When you tune into how many times you say that and how you tend to use it to sort of make something less than what it is.
That's
achievement.
right, yeah.
That's a different show probably.
But you're quite right. You're quite right. And another one is but. Don't say but, say and. Because but for some reason makes you think negative.
Right. So no, they're important things. But I love though the super connector bit. That is a real skill, because what we're talking about here is it's not, and actually, you know, in this community, we actually do talk a lot about the importance of networks, and it's not the really icky, hey, I want to connect with you and I've got that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about real human connection, where when the want and the intent, and I think that's how you and I met, right? We were connected by fabulous women.
We were.
When the want and the intent is to go, well, what can we do? Like there's an opportunity, there's a collaboration here. We don't know what it is yet, but we're going to kind of go there. So I think that's such an important skill. And I also love that you've also touched on one of my bit of a bugbear of mine, you know, about lifting each other up, because I often say, you know, I'm all for collaboration, not competition. And, you know, we don't need to compete against each other. There's enough.
No, it's having that mindset of abundance, as in there's plenty of work for all of us, and there are plenty of customers for all of us. And, you know, there's room for everyone to grow. We don't have to say, in order for me to grow, I've got to, you know, push everyone else down.
Yeah, which I think is beautiful. So we're literally about to run out of time. I knew this would go so fast.
I could talk for about 4 hours with you.
Well, I know. And Jaden's behind the scenes going, if you two don't wind it up soon, I'm going to pull the plug.
Right.
But I do want to know, so tell us now about, so, I mean, you gave us a story about, you know, how you started with She's the Boss, COVID, lunches every week, podcast, your groups, TV network for women. I want to hear more about what have you learned? What's the next step here? And how like actually what's the next step to making this a reality? I love it.
Right. Well, I've put together a pitch deck, which is the first time I've ever done anything like that. And I'm now out trying to you shouldn't be saying that. I am now out talking with people about the pitch deck, about trying to raise the funds to do it. I think that I will have it up and running by the end of this year. And so I've got a very clear goal in my mind. I need to find females that will host, but I've already got a few of those. And every time anyone says to me, as a couple of blokes said to me last week, I don't think there's an audience for that and I don't think anyone will watch it, I just go, I think you're completely wrong. I absolutely am sure that that is a gap that we are all hanging out for, and that the decision, you know, I mean, look, a piece of research came out as a gift at the end of last year, which had taken 3 years to do, that said that 100% of the news and TV programming directors are white Anglo-Saxon men over 50. And I wasn't surprised at all. And as I said to someone this morning, when they create TV networks for women or TV channels for women called Gem and Honey and all these really soft, ridiculous words that are not anything to do with fierce women, I just think, yeah, it's definitely not women making those decisions. So I just think there's a huge opportunity to shine the light on lots and lots of women in business. And so that the girls who are growing up now and the young women think, I can do anything. I've seen all these women who've done it. I know it's possible.
I love that. And I love the big vision. And I can't wait to when you're getting that medal from the UN and I say, I interviewed her on this show. Because again, I mean, we could talk about so much, but you've talked about big vision. You've talked about, you know, mentors, role models, going for it. Even your story about Con the Fruiterer, which we didn't go back to, but I was going to say then, you know, that's such a great example of going, well, I don't really know how, but I'm going to grab hold of this opportunity and give it a crack. And I think this is also...
I have to say with that one, there's nothing like having a young baby and no money in the bank to really give you a strong incentive to give it a go.
Motivation, right? But absolutely, yes. But I also think this is great for everyone who's listening, who's kind of, you know, if you're doubting or you're thinking, what if, and I don't know, and it feels... Yes, it can feel scary and roller coaster, but this is why you have amazing people around you. But grab the opportunity because you literally don't know what's going to happen. So why die wondering? I say, Jules, it has been so great to have you on the show. It's gone in a flash.
I know. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to do that. And I would love it if any of your viewers are interested in podcasts to go to She's the Boss Chats and sign up for it and have a look on the YouTube channel, She's the Boss as well, because I need more viewers. That's one of the things I have to do at the moment is get more audience. So if anyone can help me with that, I would be a very happy girl or woman, or even old woman.
Well, yes. So if anyone wants to listen to amazing women talking to other amazing women, I suggest there'll be a big audience for that. So absolutely. Thank you so much, Jules. All the best for the TV show. I can't wait to see what happens, and I'm sure I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. As always, it has been brilliant. Another great conversation. See you next time. Have a great day.